So, everybody, this is Immigration Essentials. And I would say this is always my favorite presentation because I present it and I love presenting. And I like presenting immigration information. It's nerdy, and we are an office full of nerds. We are here to get you the information that you need, but this is also really detailed information. It's information that's important for you coming to the United States, and this stuff is changing fast. So I'm going to move through this. It's a lot of content to get through. And what I am going to ask is that you hold questions um, until I have time to address them, because some of them may be addressed as we go on. And some of the information, it may be confusing until we get to the next slide, for example. So I'm going to do my best to get through it and explain everything as clearly as possible. Okay, so number one thing, Jeremiah already talked to you about how important it is to stay up to date, to read our newsletters, and I'm going to tell you again. Things change really quickly, and staying up to date is really important for you. We have a website. It's full of information. Right now, we're building out our elimination of duration of status page. There's been big changes in the immigration world. We're working on workshops and webinars and FAQs. That's where we are going to be building that. So again, you're going to get links to these slides. You can click the links. We have a Know Your Rights page. We have immigration policy updates, FAQ. We have an immigration policy updates page where we kind of give you news items of what's happening. We also have emails, so you can actually look back and see the important immigration related emails that we've sent to students. And if you miss something, go back and read it. Or if you can't find the email in your inbox again, go back and read it in our email archive. If you have questions about immigration information, we are who you should talk to. So talk to us and see our student services page. And I'm going to repeat it again. Do not unsubscribe from our emails or our newsletters. And I would say the number one problem that we have with our office is students ignoring our emails. I'm just going to be honest. We have seen an increase in the last years of I've sent maybe, 9 urgent, all caps, you're expiring, you have to do something emails to a student and they ignore it. We can't help you if you don't read your emails. So I just want to make sure that you understand right now is a time where you really have to be looking at what we send you. And I know you're getting tons of stuff from everywhere, but I think right now you've got to realize that your immigration status, we are going to be sending you stuff and it's going to be important. And let's get into what that looks like. Okay, so right now we're going through regulatory change. There are big changes coming September 15th for F1 and J1 status. We've created a web page, and that's where we're adding webinars, videos, and FAQs. If you need an overview about this, you should see our recent webinar. There's a recording and there's slides, and you can take a look at it because I'm not going to go through every single provision of that in here, but some of the things I'm talking about are directly impacted by the changes that we're seeing that are coming on the 15th. There's also other resources related to this if you want to really deep dive and understand this rule. Okay, so rules for maintaining your status. That's what we're really here to talk about. Our office has a web page, and I'll say it's currently under construction because it's true today. But on September 15th, rules are changing. So we're going to have to be updating lots of our materials, but we can't change it yet because things haven't yet changed. So we're kind of in a period of working on information and making sure that you get it. So right now, if you go to top tips for maintaining your status, you'll see information that's currently true under the current rules, but it hasn't been updated yet. There's also additional information for J1s through the Exchange Visitor Brochure and J1 Exchange Welcome Brochure. Okay, so I'm going to go over a lot of information and essentially go through 10 major things that are important for you to know about maintaining your F1 or J1 visa status. We're going to go through multiple things. One is helping you to understand your I-20, your completion date, and this new date that everyone's going to be concerned about, which is the admit until date. Secondly, about maintaining your US presence and keeping your local US address and phone number up to date. Enrolling in full-time units, getting our approval before reductions in course load or withdrawals. We're going to talk very briefly about employment authorization, but this is not the employment presentation, so I'm not giving you any details. We're going to talk about US laws, the Student Code of Conduct, about carrying immigration documentations and understanding your travel documents. We'll talk about new academic restrictions and information about attending the school on your I-20 or DS 2019, and then how to keep those documents valid, understanding your completion dates. And then finally, for those of you who are J1s, there's some special rules that apply just to J1s, and we're going to briefly address those rules. Okay, so first question we tend to get is, why are there all these rules and why does this have a limit? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Why do I have to enroll full-time? Why do I have to report my address? Why can't I work wherever I want? Well, the answer is you are being allowed into the US for a very specific purpose, and that is to be in a full-time program of study. You are not actually being allowed into the US with the intention to work. Any employment authorizations are secondary to your primary purpose, which is being a student. You're not here to hang out, you are here with a job to do. And that's actually the only reason that the government has allowed you to cross the border is because you're coming in a student visa category. So your whole purpose in being here, according to the government, is being a student. And a lot of things fall out of that. So for example, the system SEVIS, the Student and Exchange Visitor Information System, this database is tracking where you live, whether you're enrolled full-time. It's tracking your travel in and out of the US. It's tracking special authorizations like work, reduced course load, and your status is closely monitored by the government, by the Student and Exchange Visitor Program. So basically, they're making sure that you're here doing what you're supposed to do, which is to be in person at school studying full-time. And a lot comes out of that, that's your primary purpose. So as we go through, I think rather than viewing everything as restrictive, just thinking about, well, you're here for a purpose and the rules are built because that is really what you're here to do. And they want to make sure that you're here doing what you're supposed to do and they know where you are. That's essentially what's going on. Okay, so first, let's take a step back and let's look at your primary immigration document. So we're going to go through some important documents here. So first, if you look on the left side of your screen, you see I-20 and DS 2019. The I-20 is in the background, the DS 2019 is in the front. I-20 is your F1 if you have an I-20, your J1 if you have a DS 2019. And this document is issued by our office, and it's what you used as part of your visa application or to cross the border. And this includes tons of important information. It has your program start and end date, your major, your level of study, your work authorizations, which none of you have right now on your new I-20 for your new program. And so that's your I-20. This document is important, and we're going to talk about dates related to this document. The start and end dates matter for this document when you're in the US. On the right, there's a US visa. You can see Oski the bear's picture. This is only used for crossing the border, okay? So I want you to be aware that this does not determine, that visa doesn't determine how long you can stay in the US. That's determined by other things. The visa is like a ticket to cross the border. Once you cross the border, it's like the key to unlock your house. Once you go in the house, you don't need the key anymore. You're inside. And your ability to be here is determined by other documents, other things. Your I-94 arrival record. If you have not yet gotten here, you don't have it yet. But if you've already arrived, You can find this electronic record at this webpage, i94.cbp.dhs.gov. When you get here, we're going to ask you to look it up and teach you how to do that. And we have to have a copy of it as part of your arrival confirmation. This is going to be critical to the new changes in regulations. So this I-94 is a mandatory document. So after arrival, you need to get used to every time you travel, you're going to check this. And we're going to use another term called the admit until date. And I'll get more into that, but what this refers to is your allowable period of stay in the United States. So every time you come in the United States, you are admitted until, you are allowed to be here until a particular time. Okay, so let's get a little bit more into the I-20 and DS 2019. Oh, it should say DS 2019. So the I-20 is on the left, DS 2019. Sorry, Jays. Somehow I didn't write that up there, but on the right is a DS 2019 J1. So the I-20 contains important information. What I've circled and what, if you have it in front of you or if it's on your computer, I would like all of you to take a second, get out your I-20 or DS 2019. You should all have a paper copy, but if you have an electronic copy, great. I want you to look at the start and end date. And in particular, I want you to look at the end date. It's important, okay? It is important that you understand what that date is because it's going to be really important as we move forward. Your start date is important, but for most of you, it's less important now because if you're already arriving, you've made it on time. This document also contains a bunch of information. So while you're looking at it, take a look and see. Do you see your major? Do you see your level of study? You'll notice, you'll notice whether or not there's a work permission. No, none of you have one because we don't give new students who haven't started their programs work permission. You may have a travel endorsement. You'll see your SEVIS ID. So next you have your passport. So just getting to know your documents. Your passport is the thing with your picture on it that your embassy or consulate issues from your home country. And this is proof of your citizenship, proof of your identity. Oh, whoops. I don't know what just happened. This passport has to be valid at least 6 months into the future, although 12 months is recommended. And generally it can be renewed inside the US. And if yours is expiring soon while you're here, you need to contact your home country's embassy in the US to find out how to renew it. We can't renew your passport, but you have to contact your home country's embassy. So next is the visa. The visa, again, is an entry document into the United States. And this is something that you went and probably all of you know all about visas. You went and applied for a visa and you got the stamp inside your passport. It should be unexpired when you are crossing the border to enter the US as an F1 or J1. It doesn't have to stay valid while you're here. If you're Canadian, all my Canadian students, the only thing different about you being Canadian, other than that we happen to be neighbors, is that the US doesn't require you to get a visa stamp in your passport to enter the US. You have to have all the other documents. You have to have an I-20, you have to have a passport, you have to have proof of your enrollment, all the things we'll talk about, but you just don't have to go to an embassy and get a stamp in your passport. That's the only thing different about you. So I think the number one question I get about Canadians is, no matter what information we put out there, Canadians will say, does this apply to me? I'm Canadian. The answer is yes. The only thing different about you is you just don't have to have a visa in your passport to cross the border. The end. Everything else is the same. So the I-94. So we're going to talk about two scenarios. And for pretty much all of you, you should all be arriving before September 15th. Okay. I don't know why you would not be, but if you are not, this is likely going to be an issue because the semester starts on August 26th. So the I-94 shows your class of admission at arrival. So when you arrive, it shows a couple different things. It shows your class of admission. So if you're an F1, it says F1. And then it will have an admit until date, AUD. And if you arrive before September 15th, so September 14th or earlier, it's gonna say your admit until date is D/S, and that stands for duration of status. And that's what's happening. Part of this big change is that for, I don't know, 30, 40 years, students have been allowed to enter the US and they don't have a fixed end date when they enter because that end date was allowed to be flexible, that you're allowed to stay here until you completed your academic program, until you completed your practical training. And if you needed to extend and needed more time to graduate, you needed more degree requirement components, or you transferred to another school and kept studying, or you applied for post-completion training, essentially that date was flexible. And most of the time could be extended by the school by extending your I-20. You also have a grace period, and that's the period after the expiration of the I-20 or DS 2018. So there's some important things that are happening. So if you arrive before September 15th, you're going to get a DS admit until date, and you're going to get a grace period after your I-20 expires. So going back to your I-20, looking at the end of it, if you're F1, you'd get a grace period of 60 days. If you're a J1, you get a grace period of 30 days. Now, what's happening is a couple different things. If you leave the US, or if you're outside of the US after September 15th for whatever reason, either that you arrived late or you were here in the US and then you leave and you come back, either way, when you come back, you'll get an I-94 that looks different. It's going to have your class of admission, but it's going to have a new admit until date. It's not going to say DS, it's going to say a date. This is what's called a fixed end date. So this is what happens when people come on a tourist visa. They're given a set end date. It's not DS. It's like it has an end. And that means that if you need to stay beyond that end date, that admit until date, you have to take further actions to extend. And you're going to be admitted, this is the calculation. So you're either going to be admitted to the end of your I-20 or DS 2019. So that's why I want you looking at that document. What's the end of it? Plus your grace period. So the new grace period for everybody after September 15th, if you enter the US after September 15th, your grace period is 30 days, whether you're F or J. So your admit until date at that point will be the end of your document, I-20 or DS 2019, plus the grace period, or it will be 4 years plus the grace period, whichever date is shorter. And we'll get into this a little bit more because I know there's a lot of confusion about these things. The issue here is if you overstay, if you stay beyond that admit until date, you will immediately begin accruing days of unlawful presence with very serious legal consequences. So this is just kind of changing the game. Again, we're not taking verbal questions. If you have a question, post it in the Q&A, and I will do my best to get to it, but I have so much content. I'm only going to look at the Q&A until I get through the information. And I would recommend that you maybe hold your questions until I keep going, because some things I'm literally going to explain maybe on the next slide. So what is my admit until date? So if you are somebody who enters the US before September 15th, so if you're already here or your entry date is before September 15th, which I think is pretty much everybody, all F&J students are going to be automatically transitioned to a fixed end date on September 15th, but it might not show up in your I-94 because your I-94 is going to show you were admitted for duration of status. So it may not update to show you this new fixed date, but what I'm telling you right now is what that date will be. And this is true as long as you don't leave and re-enter after September 15th. Okay, so on September 15th, if your body is here and your body was here on September 14th, you will be given a new admit until date. Everybody will. Um, so what I want you to do is look at your I-20 or DS 2019 program end date. And I want you to ask yourself a question. Is that end date more or less than 4 years from September 15th, 2026? And if it is, so the answer to that question is going to determine what your admit until date. So is your I-20 or DS 2019 program end date earlier or later than September 15th, 2030? That's the question you're being asked. So on September 15th, your body's in the US, which is true. So if you say my program end date is less than 4 years from September 15th, then your admit until date will be the end of your I-20 or DS 2019. And if you're F1, you still get a 60-day grace period because you got here before September 15th. So it's going to be your I-20 plus 60 days. If you're a J1, it's going to be the end of your DS 2019 plus 30 days. That's going to be the date that you automatically convert to. That's how long you're allowed to be here without asking for an extension. If your date is longer than 4 years, what's going to happen is your admit until date is going to automatically convert to the maximum, which is only 4 years. So if you're a new PhD, for example, and you have a 6-year program, well, you're going to convert on that date of 4 years plus 60 days. So your admit until date will be November 14th, 2030. And if you're a J1, it's going to be, oh, that should be November 15th. I'm sorry. I will update that in the slides. If you're a J1, it's going to be 4 years plus 30 days. So this is true on that day. If your body's here, this is what's true. Does that mean you can't finish your degree? No, it just means you will have to take an action to extend that end date in order to remain beyond that date. And we'll talk about what that might look like. But then let's say you leave the US and you're outside of the US and you take a little trip. Maybe you travel over winter break and you come back and you get a new I-94. Your new I-94 will show an admit until date. It will show you the date. And it will be based on your new date of entry. So if you enter on January 1st, it's going to be based on that January 1st entry. So again, you're going to look at your I-20 DS 2019 program end date. Is the date of entry, is your end date more or less than 4 years from that date of entry? If your end date is less than 4 years from when you're entering the US, then your new AUD would be the program end date plus 30 days for everybody. Because once you leave and come back, everybody's got the same grace period. So they're going to recalculate the next time you enter the US. If your program, so if you enter in January 2027 and your program end date is still longer than 4 years, well, you're going to get 4 years from January 1st, 2027 plus 30 days. Okay, they're going to give you the maximum amount they can grant you for that entry. So maybe to help you understand, if you're in a really long degree program, if you travel over time, well, if you travel, let's say you have a 6-year degree program, well, if you travel in year 2, when you re-enter, you're going to be given an entry date again that's going to be later because each time you re-enter, it's going to recalculate. Okay, they're always going to look at your I-20 end date and say from the date of entry, how much longer do you have until that I-20? Is it within 4 years? Great, I'm giving you the end of your I-20 plus 30 days. Is it more than 4 years? I'm giving you until 4 years plus 30 days. Okay, so understanding these dates is really important because your immigration deadlines are dependent on both of the dates, the I-20 DS 2019 end date and this AUD, this maximum period of stay. If you need more time to finish your degree, you have to do 2 things. You have to extend your I-20 or your DS 2019, but you also have to extend your AUD, which is a separate procedure. you have to extend your I-20 or your DS 2019 before it expires. Okay, and that expiration is earlier, most likely, than your AUD. And you have to apply for an extension of stay or exit the US before the end of your AUD. And you can apply for an extension for a number of reasons. Um, you could, so you have two choices. You can either remain in the US and file for an extension, or you could leave the US before your AUD end date, and then you come back with new extended documents and you're allowed back in with a longer period of time. So there's kind of two ways to make that extension happen, but you have to do something. So let's get into maintaining your status. So what I want to say about this new rule and the extensions and the AUD, we're going to have more webinars just about this topic. So if you're feeling stressed and confused right now, it's okay. Go back and watch again. It's a lot of information about the dates, but also know we're going to have ongoing education and webinars. I'm trying to fit everything into this presentation, but we're going to be here to address your questions. So completing your arrival. So now we're getting into the second piece of the first thing is you understanding your documents, that you have these documents and they have dates associated with them. I'm recommending like you put those dates in your calendar, in your phone, get in there and say, my I-20 expires on this day. My AUD will be this day. Get in there and do it. Okay, so that you're not confused and taken by surprise. We're going to email you. We're going to be telling you what those dates are. But at the end of the day, it's your record and you're the one who has to remember it. So your first step, once you get here, we need you to complete your arrival confirmation and address reporting. You're going to go to Cal Central and complete these task items. Your arrival confirmation form, that includes uploading your I-94. So you're going to learn how to access that I-94, look at that AUD, see what it looks like. And then you're going to update your local US address and phone number. Local, there are different ways to update your address. And when you go into Cal Central, you have to update local because that's what we push into the immigration system. It's okay if you have a temporary address. You have to report something when you get here. So if you're staying in a hotel, at a friend's house, it's okay. But anytime, and this is an immigration regulation, it is real, it is required and mandatory, and it is illegal if you don't do it. You have to update your address within 10 days of any change. For you, that means updating Cal Central within 10 days of any change of address. It's really critical, and we're getting information that immigration is really looking at this stuff. They are really looking to see if students are properly updating addresses. It's in the regulations, and technically, if you don't meet that deadline, you have violated the regulations. So I just want to be mindful that this is really critical. And part of it is they're tracking where you are and where that you're supposed to be where you are. Next, you are here to study in the United States full-time in person. You are not here to do other stuff and maintain a full-time life back home. You are meant to be here doing specific things. You have to maintain US physical presence. You can't be outside of the US for 5 or more consecutive months. And that's a hard line, but it's also maximal. You are expected to be in the US either studying in person full time or after graduation, you're engaged in your full-time post-completion employment. Temporary absences or travel are allowed, but they shouldn't interfere with your studies and your work in the US. So usually after I present this, I get a bunch of questions that are kind of about enrollment and flexibilities. So I think what I want to get into is is getting into what this means. So you being physically in the US, the reason for that is you're supposed to be going to class. You're supposed to be here studying, not somewhere else studying remotely. So when you're enrolling, You're expected to be full-time. And for most departments, full-time is 12 units. We have some exceptions for some specific graduate departments. You can look at our full-time enrollment requirements page for full details. A handful of graduate departments have lower than 12 units for full-time. Majority of students do not. Most departments require 12 units. All undergraduates, undergrads, your full-time requirement is 12 units. Some colleges may require more. For example, College of Letters and Science requires, for academic reasons, that you have 13 units. Summer enrollment is not required unless summer is your very first or very last semester of study for immigration purposes. Now, you might be in a special academic program that requires your summer enrollment, then it's required for you. But generally, summer is considered your vacation if it's a sandwich between spring and fall semester. So if you're going to school in spring, you're going to school in fall, summer is generally not required unless you're graduating in summer, and then you have to be enrolled in person. And oops, I meant to talk about, and so the regulations are very, very clear, no exceptions. Online instruction, only one class or 3 units of online instruction is allowed that can be counted towards your full-time enrollment requirements. So you're expected to be here studying in person. That means you're showing up to your labs, you're showing up to your classes. Remote instruction is highly limited. You can look for the appropriate classes in the academic guide. What you're looking for is that you are enrolled in classes that are coded as in person, or if you have a class and it has multiple components, like you have a class that has a lecture and it has a discussion section and it has a lab, at least one of the components has to be in person. Okay, so it might be that your class has 3 components and one of them's online, but the others are in person, that's fine. But if it's coded, if the instructional mode is online or web-based and there is no class component that is in person, that is an online class and you only get one of those. The rest of your enrollment has to be in person. And you are expected to be physically present and attending classes. So let's get into my number one question. I'm enrolled in a class that's coded as in person. My professor or academic advisor told me it's okay for me not to go to class and study, and I can study remotely because attendance is optional. Is that okay? No, not for you. You're an international student, it's not okay for you. You are expected to be attending class in person as required. If your professor says you don't have to ever attend, that's not true. You do have to attend. And if that class is coded as in person, that's what it should have been. Please let us know if someone is saying that it's a fully remote class and it's coded as in person, because that's something that we need to report to the registrar because it's not accurate coding and you need to choose a different class. Well, the second question I usually get, and this is a question about a lot of things where there's a rule and then somebody says, but I'm really special. Like, you don't know how special I am. Oh, we're all special. So I have a really important thing to do in my home country. I have an internship, I have family issues. It's just cheaper for me to live there. And my faculty says I can just study remotely. My department, it said it's okay for me to study from there. Is that okay? Well, is it summer vacation, spring break, or winter break? Sure, do what you want. Is it during fall or spring when you're enrolled? Well, check with us. How long is this going to be? Is this just a week? Or are you talking about the whole semester, months? This is concerning. So you need to talk to us before making any plans. And keep in mind, your department has no authority to answer about immigration rules. Okay, that's not what they can advise you on. Only our office can. Also, there are restrictions on travel and accessing university data, technology, using equipment. There's rules about that, so it may not be as okay as they think. Why am I not able to just enroll remotely from outside the US? Well, it's in the regulations, and basically immigration is like, If you don't need to be present in the US for your studies, you don't qualify for an F1 or J1 visa. So if you're able to study fully remotely, you're proving that you don't need to be here. So you're welcome to study remotely, but you can't have F1 or J1 status and do that. So, if you want to do that, if you want to study fully remotely, we can end your record and you can go home and study remotely from abroad, but that's your only option. Okay, so next, studying online, you're here to study in person. That's what you're here to do. Second, you're here to study full time. So if you have to reduce your course load, it may be possible. And if you need to do that, it would be for specific reasons that are allowable by immigration. And we only have three. We have academic first semester. So this is you are having issues related to language or reading requirements in your first semester. Or you have a serious medical condition, and we have to go through a documentation procedure. And I want to be clear, not DSP. DSP's procedures do not meet BIO's needs. So if you need to reduce your course load and DSP says it's okay, that's great, but you don't have immigration permission. You have to ask for that with us. Or your final semester, when you're graduating, you're allowed to have less than full-time units. Just finish what you need, but you have to have permission. Approval is required. We have to add information to your immigration record before you drop below full-time units. Additionally, if you need to take a break or withdraw, everybody has stuff going on and lives back home. And if you are having a situation where you need to take a break, you can do that, but you have to tell us in advance. Otherwise, it will have a negative impact on your immigration record. Doing any of these things, dropping below, withdrawing, or canceling without our permission will negatively impact your F1 or J1 status. So far we've got a few different things, okay? Understand your documents and your end dates, update your address, report your arrival, enroll in person, enroll full-time, ask for permission to reduce your course load. And then next, only work with proper employment authorization. I know everybody wants to ask some employment questions. I'm not here to answer those. My colleague Catherine will be here to present about employment in the US. So that's when she's going to get into your employment questions, including, I think, the hot topic of the day about CPT. But what I can tell you is a basic thing is see our employment page for general information for both F1 and J1 types of employment. But the number one thing I want you to walk away with is do not work without proper authorization. It is highly illegal. It will come back to you. And it's a serious violation of F1 and J1 student visas. And the government is really intense about the scrutiny on this issue. If you're not sure, just ask us first. Okay, that is what we would prefer. If you're looking into an option and you're not sure if you can do it, check in with us first. Catherine's going to get you educated on the basics of like generally what you can and can't do, what you can ask for, and how to do it. Next, avoid violating the US Code of Conduct, the Berkeley Code of Conduct, or US laws. So this is a big one. UC Berkeley, so there's kind of two different types of misconduct at the university. One is academic misconduct and the other is behavioral. Most of what we see is academic, and I will say UC Berkeley takes academic integrity very seriously. Having misconduct can lead to suspension or dismissal from the university, and that's serious. Any impact on your enrollment impacts your ability to maintain F1 or J1 status. So if you get suspended or dismissed, you can't stay in the US. You have to leave because you can't be in F1J status if you're dismissed or suspended from the university. Additionally, certain types of misconduct could make an extension of stay later harder for you under these new rules. If you have any student conduct issue, contact our office and we can check in with you. So here's some examples of academic misconduct. Cheating. So most of the time students know if they're cheating. You're copying somebody else's answers. You have the test answers, things like that. Don't cheat. If you're thinking about cheating, take a step back and see what you need to do to help yourself. Do you need more time? Do you need to check in with your faculty? Are you unprepared for an exam? But the bad choice is choosing to cheat. Plagiarism, self-plagiarism. We see this a lot. Students are using sources that are not their own. Self-plagiarism means you're using your own work in different classes without permission. So you can actually plagiarize yourself. Unauthorized group work or collaboration. So a bunch of students study together, prep for the exam, and when they sit down to the exam, they weren't really supposed to be sharing problem sets together, but they did. They sit down and they all replicate the same answers. I've seen a lot of cases like that as an example. Falsification, don't fake stuff. I know it seems obvious, but don't fake it. That includes documents to the university. Don't make up a fake document or try to pass things like fake signatures, things like that. Those are usually really, really serious. Number one issue, and I don't know how to go on about it, but inappropriate AI use. I think 9 out of 10 conduct cases I see are students using AI. Do not use AI without checking with your instructor about how you're allowed to use it. I'm serious, any kind of AI. And I will say it is, students are running into this all the time. It's often obvious when you're using it. You might not think it's obvious, but it is. And we're having a lot of problems with this issue. So you may feel it's a useful tool, but you have to confirm with each and every instructor how you are permitted to use and what kinds of AI tools you can use. This is probably the number one thing, and I'm seeing some students do it over and over, and that's leading to suspensions or dismissals. Behavioral misconduct is a lot of different things. Dishonesty, forgery, stealing, stalking, terrorizing people, lots of bad things. So don't do anything bad. Please behave in an honest and orderly and nonviolent way. So one thing I want to tell you about conduct is they switched to some new processes in the last year, and hopefully nobody gets a conduct issue. But if you do, sometimes things happen. If you do, you're going to get an email from studentconduct@berkeley.edu. If you see that email in your inbox, you look at it right away, because it's going to include information about the allegations and options to respond. And it requires you to respond within 5 business days. If you don't respond, something automatic will happen. Like, you basically, if you don't respond, generally there's an automatic sanction that will happen. So it's really important you read it, you see what it means, and you understand what to do next. Read carefully and review everything, and each step has processes and deadlines. If something really bad is happening, it may give you options so that you can, not be immediately dismissed, so that you have an opportunity to talk to somebody, to request a hearing, to appeal, all these different things. So you've got to read carefully. If you don't respond within the deadlines, you may be automatically subject to anything that was included in the notification. And if it included suspension or dismissal, that would happen automatically if you didn't respond on time. Okay, next, more serious stuff. I know there's so much serious stuff going on. So next is encounters with law enforcement. So if something happens, if you have an encounter with police, with law or immigration enforcement, we want to know as soon as possible. If you are arrested, it happens. Not very often, but things happen. Sometimes you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sometimes we make mistakes or make bad choices. Arrests can have really serious consequences with immigration, and they can impact your ability to travel, your status in the US, and your ability to extend your stay. Even if charges were dismissed or dropped, it's still really, really serious for immigration purposes. So for this reason, we need to know so we can help you. We're here to help and support. And if you contact us about an encounter with law enforcement, the number one thing we're going to do is advise you and get you resources to get connected to legal support. That's what we're here for. We don't have to take action related to the arrest. What we want to do is get you connected because it's really serious. If you have any urgent legal or immigration issues, like you're at risk for deportation, detention, arrest, you have trouble at the port of entry, we have an emergency contact form. And we also have some pages. And in a minute, I'm going to go through kind of emergency planning. But for right now, what I want you to know are a couple really specific legal reminders. So the things that you do on and off campus can impact your visa status. So how you act, what you do, whether you're on campus or off campus can impact you. So we want you to always be safe, take care of yourself, protect yourself, be smart, think ahead. If you're going out on the weekend and you have a certain friend who always behaves badly and gets in fights with people, you're not somebody who wants to be around if somebody else gets arrested, things like that. So you kind of want to be smart and think about, is this a wise choice for me? Because you're not like your US friends. If you have certain types of interactions, it's more dangerous for you. And be peaceful. I'll be chill. You always want to be nonviolent in your interactions. We know students like to sometimes engage in protest activities. We'll talk about that in a minute, but keep in mind, you don't control circumstances, so if there are things that you're engaged in that could be risky or put you at risk of encounters with law enforcement, just be mindful that the impact could be different for you than your US friends. Respect consent in your interpersonal relations. You're going to go through training through the university on sexual violence and sexual assault. Respect consent. Legal drinking age here in the chat. It is 21, all right? So if you are not 21, you are not legally allowed to drink here. And it doesn't matter what your home country says. You can go home and you're welcome to have a drink at home, but it's illegal here. Also, cannabis, marijuana is federally illegal. It is an federally illegal substance. Use, possession, or even possession of drug paraphernalia can lead you to be deported or arrested and can lead to your visa being revoked. It's confusing because different states have decriminalized or legalized cannabis. At the federal level, meaning the level of the whole United States, laws that you are subject to, it is illegal. If you have a drug or alcohol violation, it can lead to being barred from the US and findings of future inadmissibility, meaning you can't come back. So it's really, really serious, and immigration takes drug and alcohol violations or violations that are related to, physical harm, violence. They take all that stuff extremely seriously. So just keep in mind, you have to obey state and federal laws. So if your US friends are telling you it's okay to go to the cannabis dispensary and buy things, it's not okay for you because it's federally illegal. If they're a US citizen, they're subject to different rules than you are, but you are subject to different rules. Okay, so what can you do to stay safe and prepare for these kind of emergencies? And honestly, we hope nothing happens. But first, we want you to review our Know Your Rights page, and that has a lot of information and resources about interactions with, law enforcement and different situations and scenarios, so you can kind of understand what your rights are. Create an emergency contact plan. So this is something like, you could do it tonight. Talk to your friends or family. Identify a predetermined family or friend who's your emergency contact in case of arrest or detention, or any kind of emergency contact. It's good for you to have that. Make sure that they are ready and prepared to contact emergency legal support. Notify bio, and if you want, to contact your country's embassy or consulate in the U.S. So creating that emergency plan is critical. So what you're going to do is you can review our legal assistance page and our rapid response resources, which will come on the next slide. And you can make sure your emergency contact knows those resources. So if something happens to me, I'm going to contact you. I need you to contact legal support. I need you to contact bio and maybe your embassy. Carry documentation of your status. We'll talk a little bit more about this later, but yes, you are expected to have evidence of your registration, which is your I-94, as well as other documents that confirm your status, your I-20, your DS 2019, if you're graduated and on OPT, your OPT card. If you're traveling, you're expected to have the original documents with you as well. And follow all these rules that I'm telling you to maintain your status. Don't get in trouble. Be enrolled full time. Don't drop without approval. Don't work without permission. And then be mindful that there was an executive order that's increased scrutiny on protest participation and that certain activities could put your status at risk. So just be mindful that your activities are maybe more heavily scrutinized. So rapid response and legal support, there are some local resources to report ICE activity, which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or if you need emergency legal assistance, like, if you're in a deportation situation, there's a local phone number, the Alameda County helpline, or one if you're in San Francisco. And there's also a longer list if you're in other parts of California. We have an emergency contact form. This is second. If you have been arrested or you're in deportation situation with immigration, you need to contact your emergency contact because you need an immigration attorney. We aren't able to provide that level of support. We're not attorneys. So, but our emergency contact is what you would submit to let us know that something's happened so that we can then connect with your support team. The state of California has resources for immigration and legal support that includes emergency support. And we also have a legal assistance page that has information on getting legal assistance, including immigration attorneys. Okay, so I know it's a lot. This is hard stuff. Hopefully this doesn't apply to anybody. We have to give you the information to keep you safe. But, of course, we hope nobody runs into problems. And we haven't been in a situation where we've had lots of students who've had problems. Basically, students have gone about their business and gone to school, but we want you prepared for emergencies. So always carry your immigration documentation. This is mandatory. This is part of the rules about your F1 status. Technically, you're expected to have evidence of your status with you at all times. So if you choose not to carry your originals, you actually should have printed copies of your documents if you're in the Bay Area. So that's a copy of your I-20 or DS 2019, copy of your passport, copy of your visa, your I-94, if you're after graduation, a copy of your EAD. Now, we recognize nobody wants to run around with sensitive documents all the time, but technically, the regulations indicate that you are, if asked, you could have to present your documents at any point. Generally, I think what we've heard students tend to do is if they're in the area, they keep their originals at home in a safe place and they carry copies with them so that they at least have photocopies of things like in a folder or, in your bag. If you leave the Bay Area, technically it's always a requirement, but we recognize students don't always want to run around, just go to class and have all your documents with you. But if you're outside of the Berkeley area, you must have all the original documents safely protected. And you need to bring all your documents, even on US domestic plane flights. We're getting reports that there have been some immigration issues at US airports just for US flights as well. So you just want to always have that evidence that, hey, I'm here legally, I have the information, it's readily available. So some students are still under a travel ban. These are the countries. Basically, if you're a student who's subject to the travel ban, maybe you transferred to us or you entered before the ban started, which, you're probably not here for the first time. But if you're from a travel ban country, just be aware that you won't be able to return to the US if you leave the US and you didn't have an already issued valid visa. So next, required entry documents. So these are the entry documents if you're an enrolled student. This is what you want to have when you're entering the US. You're always going to you need your passport valid for at least 6 months in the future. You need an unexpired F or J visa. You need a printed and signed I-20 or DS 2019 with a valid travel signature within 12 months of your entry date. After graduation, if you're on OPT, it's only valid for 6 months, that signature, and I'll show you what it looks like. Evidence of financial resources, proof of your enrollment, so full-time in-person enrollment, and proof of your SEVIS fee payment. And you can find a link to how to look up your SEVIS fee payment. Every time you travel, you may be asked questions about your reasons for entering the US, where you're going, about your academic program, so be ready to answer. And you can see all these details on our travel and reentry page. So what's a travel signature? It's for F1s, it's on the second page of your I-20. For J1s, it's on the first page of your DS 2019. There's a little box. For F1s, when we issue your first I-20, we do give you a travel signature, so you already have one. J1s, we're not able to do that because the rules are different for J1s. And we have to give it to you later, and we'll be working on updating your J1 documents with the travel endorsement within about the first 30 days of the semester. Don't come asking for it. We will get it to you. But if you have to travel within the first 30 days of the semester, yes, ask us. So take a look and locate that on your documents and notice what the date is. And your I-20 or DS 2018, when you're traveling, you have to print it out and carry it in your human hands and show it to the person at the border, not your phone or not your laptop. You have to have the physical document printed out, and then you sign it with your human hand. You are not allowed to sign electronically. We are, but not you. So print it out and sign it with your hand. So here's a little close-up of what that looks like. If you're returning, you need a valid endorsement, and that's valid for 12 months of travel. So if we issued it and you look at the date, you need to think, when am I re-entering the US? Is it within 12 months of that date? So how do you get a new signature? You submit a replacement document request. It's on our website, and we'll give you a new I-20 or DS 2019 with new travel endorsement. We have a 5 business day processing time. If you are submitting in less than 5 business days, we may not be able to help you. You're on your own. You're an adult, and you can submit things on time. You can drop off your I-20 at our office. If you want it physically signed, you have to print it and we could sign it. Most people just request a replacement. And we do have some emergency options during our drop-in virtual advising, but this is only for unseen emergency situations if you enter the US in fewer than 5 business days. Basically, you need to plan ahead. And generally, most students are not dealing with an emergency that's so severe that you can't check your documents before you leave. You're all adults, and you are all capable of checking your documents before you leave. We want to try to help you, but keep in mind, we deal with over 10,000 students. So we're not able to immediately turn around because you're at the airport at midnight and you forgot your documents. We just may not be able to help you, and you could be in a difficult situation. So check before you leave, not when you're coming back. So preparing for arrival, you're all either about to do this or you did it. You're going to carry all your required documents with you, like not in your bag that's under the plane, in the bag that's with you on the plane that you're carrying. It's best if you can arrive during our office, during our hours, because then if there's a problem, if CBP calls our office, it's easier for them to get through to somebody. Don't bring any restricted items. There's rules about medicine, food, or pets. And, remember, marijuana is illegal. It includes crossing the border. You could be deported or jailed for bringing illegal substances in the US, or indicating that you are a user of illegal substances and that you're planning to do so in the US. That includes paraphernalia, unless it's like, medical paraphernalia, like, you have diabetes and you have medical paraphernalia. Be aware that US Customs and Border Protection may inspect your electronic devices or conduct social media reviews. So if they ask you for your phone, you would have to hand over your phone, or they could deny you entry. Well, what's on your phone? Is it showing you engaged in any activities you wouldn't want immigration taking a look at? Maybe you might want to take a look at what you're putting out there in social media, or what you're putting out there on the internet. And you can see the ACLU's tips on how to prepare devices for traveling. Okay, so we're moving a little bit towards we have our last, let me see, how much more do I have? I just want to make sure that, oh, good, I've still got plenty of time. Okay, I just want to try to get to your questions, but I still have to keep moving. So this is about academic restrictions. So the new regulations are bringing academic restrictions. So we're going to talk about academic restrictions and what it means to attend the school that's on your I-20 or DS 2019. So you are expected to attend UC Berkeley full-time. That means you're studying here, not somewhere else. If you want to take classes at another school while you're at UC Berkeley, you may be able to do that, but keep in mind, any classes that you take elsewhere will not count towards your full-time enrollment at Berkeley for visa purposes. So like if you want to take a community college class for your own enrichment, it's not going to count for visa purposes towards your full-time enrollment. Maybe your college would let you have credit for it, but for visa purposes, what we care about is that you are enrolled at Berkeley full-time. But other than that, as of September 15th, there are new academic restrictions, particularly for F1s. So F1s, this new rule has new restrictions for F1s related to transferring to other schools or change of educational levels, objectives. So the new rule starting September 15th applies to everybody, and it has specific parts about changes of educational objectives. Educational objectives are defined by immigration as major and educational level. That is the definition that they've provided in the regulations. If you're below the graduate level, so undergraduates, if you're an F1, you're not permitted to transfer to another school or change your educational objectives during your first academic year of the program that issued that original I-20. So no major changes and no transfers within the first academic year. Some of this we need clarity on because we recognize some students go from undeclared to declared. That you just don't have a major and then you do. We are waiting for guidance on how narrow the definition of major is, but this is how it's defined in the new regulations. We're going to have workshops and webinars kind of unpacking these things moving forward, but this is how it's currently written. If you're a graduate student, no transfer and no change of educational objectives is allowed at any point during the program of study. So the program of study, as we understand it right now, is during your period of study in this degree program at Berkeley. So you're not permitted to transfer out, you're not permitted to change your major or change your level while you're in the middle of studies. If you complete a program, you may be able to transfer or change your level. But if you complete a degree in the US after September 15th at one educational level, so a US degree program, you can't change to the same or lower level in the future. That's how the regulations are currently written. So if in 2025 you completed a US master's degree, yes, right now you can come back and do another US master's degree. Yes, it's possible. But if you finish a US master's degree in 2027, the regulations are indicating that you would not be able to do a new program of study after you finish that master's degree that was completed after September 15th, 2026. You would not be able to change to the same level, so master's, or to a lower level, like a bachelor's or an associate's. So we're still learning more about some of these academic restrictions, but I would say right now, just be mindful that with the new regulations are coming restrictions that are restrictive on changes, and they are more restrictive for graduate students than they are for undergrads. J1s already have existing limitations related to transfer and program objectives. So J1s, that's not changing for you. For you, you're a little bit more flexible under these, based on what the new rules for F1 are, but it's always been a little more restrictive with the J1s. You're allowed to change as long as you maintain your primary objective and it doesn't change your field of study, essentially. But you can only transfer in your same J category and you can't change to a lower level or a different category. So for example, if you're an EAP student, that's a category. You can't change to a degree seeking student. You could leave the US and come back on a new J record and do that, but you can't like just change within the US. Or if you're a J1 and you're in a master's degree and you want to transfer to another school and I don't know why, finish a new bachelor's degree, you can't do that. You can't go lower. So the J's have always had restrictions on transfer and level change, but it's a little more flexibly written than these new F1 regulations. And it's a bit clearer. The F1, the new rule is not super clear, and we're still waiting for guidance. So next, you've got to keep your documents valid at all times and understand your completion dates. So your end date and your extension of stay. So we talked at the beginning about this admit until date. Your admit until date, if you want to stay longer than that, you have to timely file an extension of stay with immigration, or you have to leave and re-enter. This is true also for if you have an F2 or J2 dependent. If they are associated with your record, they also have to apply for an extension of stay or travel, the same as the J1 or F1. And if you don't extend on time and you need to stay, that's going to have serious consequences. So step one of this process is looking at your general document, your I-20 or DS 2019, and you have to request an extension of that document if it's expiring before your I-20 or DS 2019 expires. We can't extend you if your I-20 or DS 2019 has already expired. So that's something you always have to keep in mind. UCEAP students, if you want to extend, you have to first have approval from your home institution and UCEAP. So if you're a UCEAP student, you actually have something you have to think about ahead of time, whereas you have other people to ask if you can extend. Extending your I-20, that requires a form to our office and documents, funding documents and approval by academic advisors that you can't complete your degree in the time that you were given. That's why we can extend you. But that part, just extending the I-20 or DS 2019, that just goes through our office, this piece. So that's just step one. So you can look up your program end date, see what it is. J1s, look it up. And then you have a choice. You have two ways to extend your AUD, your time to stay in the US. You can either have an extended I-20, or maybe you're a PhD who already has a much longer end date than the AUD you were given. Let's say you entered and you were only given 4 years, you have 6 years. If your original I-20 program length was longer than your AUD, your I-20 end date doesn't need an extension, you just have an I-20 that's longer than your period of stay. So the first step is you need an I-20 that has the extension being beyond your current admit until date. And then you have to file with immigration. So this is one way to do it. You file with immigration, and the important thing is, I think I want all of you aiming for filing that request before your I-20 or DS 2019 expires. Because if you do that and you have like an on-campus job or you have CPT, as long as you file before you expire, you can keep working. There's an automatic extension of employment. So if you're staying in the US and extending while you stay in the US, this is one way to do it. And to do that, you're going to have to show documentation. Don't worry, we're going to have workshops on this. So don't worry, I'm just hitting the basics. But what you should understand is you have to show you have a compelling academic reason or documented illness, or, I mean, they have circumstances beyond your control, but that's really major. It's like natural disasters, school closures. But if your reason that you can't finish is because of probation or repeated unwillingness to complete your program requirements, like you've been kind of repeatedly failing, that may not be approved. The restrictions are getting harder. The other option is, instead of staying in the US and filing before your extension of stay expires, what you could do is you could get a new document with a later end date. Your I-20 or DS 2019 has a later end date, and you leave the US and then you come back in. And when you come back in, you're granted a later end date. So for a lot of students, this is going to happen over time for you anyway if you already have a longer I-20. So here's some examples. Let's say you're a PhD and your end date is actually May 16th, 2031. But your AUD, you get transitioned, like we talked about at the beginning, to October 15th, 2030. And you leave the US for summer break in 2027. When you leave and you come back in August, what we expect is that when you re-enter in August 1st, 2027, you'll be given a new end date of June 15th, 2031. So originally you were given an AUD of 2030, but you leave, you come back. So again, they're calculating that new end date from the date of entry to your I-20 or DS 2019 end date. So now you're in range, you're within 4 years of your degree end date. So you're going to be given the full time, your program end date plus 30 days. So, this other one is an undergraduate who extends. So we have an undergrad who's graduating who has an I-20 that expires May 14th, 2027. And their admit until date is June 16th, 2027. So plus 30-day grace period. They know they need more time to finish the degree, and they apply for an I-20 extension in December, and they get the new I-20, and that new I-20 end date is in December 2027. So they're graduating a semester later in fall 2027. That student travels over the winter break and re-enters in January 2027. This student will be given more time. So they would be given the additional time, the end of the new I-20 plus the 30-day grace period. So this is a way you might extend if you know you're going to be traveling in the future already, and oh, I need one more semester. I've planned ahead. I'm going to request my I-20 extension, and I am traveling over spring break, or I'm traveling over winter break, or I know I'm going to travel over the summer, and I'm going to leave before my period of stay is ended. And you're naturally going to extend your program. So finally, we get into understanding your grace period. Your main goal here is to study, and when you get to the end, you have to take certain actions. The length of time is called a grace period, and the grace period starts counting from the I-20 completion date. If you enter the US and you don't leave, if you enter before September 15th and you never leave, the whole time you're here, you don't leave. If you're an F1, you'd have a 60-day grace period. If you're an F1 and you enter the US for the first time or again, like if you stay and then you leave and you come back, if you enter at any point after September 15th, when you come back, you're going to get a 30-day grace period. So probably for most of you, you're going to get a 30-day grace period eventually, unless you just never ever leave the US if you're an F1. If you file for an extension of stay with immigration, when they approve you, they're going to give you a 30-day grace period. So it might be adjusted. And J1s, you just have a 30-day grace period. So we have a big chart. There's a lot of things that you can do in different timelines. So the main thing with the grace period is it's mainly used for departure. So at the end of your program, if you're going to leave, well, if you have the 30-day grace period, you came here before September 15th, you're an F1 and you never left, and you still have a 60-day grace period, you could leave within 60 days. But if you've ever left the US at any point during your studies, when you come back, you're only going to get 30 days. Then you would need to leave the US in 30 days. If you're a J1, your grace period, there's no change for you. You have to leave within 30 days. If you want to file an extension of stay with immigration, you have to do that before the end of whatever your grace period is, but you have to extend your I-20 before that. And you have to extend the I-20 before it expires. And also, there are these employment rules related to that. We're going to email you guys about this. It's a lot to cover right now. If you want to transfer out, it looks like pretty much for everybody, you have to have transferred out within 30 days, but you likely also you may have to have an extension of stay. If you want to extend your I-20, you have to do that before it expires. If you want to extend your DS 2019, before it expires. If you want to apply for post-completion employment, your deadline is within 30 days of completing, but the timelines are long. You're probably going to start a lot earlier. If you're a J1, you have to apply for your post-completion training before your end date. So J1s and J2s, I'm just going to get through this quickly. You have specific health insurance requirement. SHIP meets that. If you don't have SHIP and you're waiving, you have to meet specific requirements. I don't advise you to waive it. You should have SHIP. It's really good insurance and it meets the requirements. We have a 2-year, you may have a 2-year home country residency requirement. We provided you a notification about this when we issued your documents. Basically, if you're subject, you have to go home for 2 years or get a waiver before you can change to more permanent visa categories like H, L, K, or green card. J2s, if you have dependents, they're subject if the J1 is. And the J2s can't fulfill or waive the requirement by themselves. Basically, why would you be subject? You got home government or US government funding, you got funding from an international organization, or you're on what's called a skills list. We have workshops and you're welcome to review. We're not here to cover all of that here. And I just want to make sure that all of you who heard the word waiver about the residency requirement, don't file a waiver without talking to us. If you file a waiver and you're approved, we can't extend you. That means no academic training, no transfers. You just have to go home in your grace period. So just, don't take any actions before getting educated on them. And then the J's also have this other rule that probably you don't need to worry about it right now. But if you are in a J program for more than 6 months, there are like 7 or 8 different J categories. If you wanted to come back later as a J1 professor or research scholar, this is often used for postdocs. You have to sit out of the US for 12 months. They just don't want you repeating in a new J category. It doesn't apply to people that were here for less than 6 months. Most people, this doesn't really matter, but occasionally it comes up. Okay, finally, F and J to dependents. So if you have children or children under 21 or a spouse, a legally married spouse, they could come under F2 or J2 status. J2s can apply for work permission. It's not guaranteed, but they can apply. J2s are eligible to study part-time or full-time. F2s have more limitations. They can't work. They are not eligible. They never are. If you're F2, spouse or child, no, you cannot work. F2 children can attend elementary school, secondary school, so K through 12. F2 spouses can be enrolled less than full-time at an SCBP approved school. But if you want to be full-time, you'd have to change to F1 if you're above, the elementary or secondary school level. You can do things that are avocational or recreational, like non-academic hobbies, recreational studies, full-time, like you could take a full-time cooking class or something like that. And they need the same documents to travel. They need passport, I-20DS 2019 with travel signature. They need a visa, and they also need copies of all the F and J documents. And then some issues about it. The AUD for F2s and J2s is pretty much the same. It's based on the same things that the primary, the F1 or J1, except if anyone has a child that's turning 21, contact bio because we want to talk to you. You're going to get some reminders from us because things are a little different if you have a child approaching 21 years of age. I think most of you, that's not the case, but occasionally we do have a J that has children approaching that age. And the issue is they lose eligibility to keep J2 status if they're aging out, and some special rules apply. If you extend your stay, they have to extend their stay. You need to apply together. It doesn't work separately. Like, essentially you all have that same end date. You all have to apply to extend. Okay, oh my gosh, so much information. I know there's a lot of questions, and I'm gonna do my best to answer questions, or I'm working on an FAQ right now, so I'm also gonna be adding questions to the FAQ because I know this is a lot of information.